I've been VP of Jewish Climate Action Network for many years now, and it's an honor. And we have an exciting program tonight. Legs and Regs is going to be running this program in just a minute after my introductory remarks, which will only take a couple minutes. So David Schreiber, who's on the call, hi David, has said, hey, you know what? What JCAN does is top down and bottom up. So the program tonight is going to be what we might consider top down policy that comes from above. Maybe that's the right way to look at it. Anyway, the other side of what we do is bottom up, which is what I've mostly worked organizing at the ground level, at the consumer level, at the synagogue level. They're both necessary. They both need to accelerate. They both need to come together. And that's what I spoke about a lot at the last meeting. Some of you were there, and if you weren't, ask me or Thea. We can get you the link to the recording. But I just want to give you a quick update, 3 things. So I talked about acceleration is needed. And how do we know if we're accelerating? Well, I think we might be. There is no absolute, history will show us later. But for now, do we know that we're in accelerating mode? Well, we are accelerating. Are we accelerating fast enough? Doubtful. But we are accelerating exciting, just anecdotal information. So get back to your teams, get back to your synagogue green teams and ask if any of these things are happening. PV, HP, EV. Here's my anecdotes. Photovoltaics, in the last 6 weeks, I've gotten inquiries, different members of my synagogue saying, I want to go solar now. They want to go solar now. After all these years, now's the time. Great. 6. That's huge in my little synagogue. 6 people in 6 weeks. HP. We ran in my town, small town of Medfield, program. We call it Heat Pumps 101. Heat Pumps 101. 22 people who signed up for that program said they're going to be replacing their heating systems in the next 2 years. 22 people signed up for.
You froze, Fred, if you can hear us. I wonder if he maybe needs to sign out and just talk without the video, because I guess he has an unstable connection. Anyone have a suggestion? Does anyone know how to contact him?
Yeah, I will text him, but
simple is sign out and sign back in.
Right. I don't. Oh wait. Yeah. Does the question is does we do it? I think I know. Okay.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes. No.
Say something.
Yes, no. Okay. I'm almost done with my remarks. That's the ground level. That's the bottom up. Hopefully I didn't cut out so much that you didn't hear any of these promising anecdotal. Look for it in your own teams, please, and report back. I ask you to put, I'm sorry for the unstable connection. I ask you to put on your calendar May 26th. I'll put it in the chat. May 26th is the next meeting of JCAN. It will be all about Mass Energize and the JCAN Mass Energize connection and how every synagogue should be signing up for it. So please look at massenergize.com between now and then. I'll put it in the chat. The rest of the program will be about our top-down work, and I pass it over. It will be passed over actually to John, who will be the MC. But first, we're going to hear Devar from Rabbi Katie. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. It's good to see everyone. So, yeah, I want to set the stage for what's coming here. And this is, I'm going to ask you for some responses along the way. So feel free to put things into the chat. So we are in the stage of the calendar where we are counting the Omer. And it's kind of interesting to pay attention to time in a very focused way, because it does keep going by, but sometimes we notice it in different ways. But we are in this journey from bondage to revelation. Bondage, redemption, revelation. Counting the Omer, we start on Passover and we end at Shavuot. So it's interesting that this is the process that we're counting. We're counting our way from being in bondage to being to being redeemed from bondage and free, but freedom isn't enough. We need revelation. And so there's some interesting things about this particular day in counting the Omer. But first of all, the period of counting the Omer between Passover and Shavuot is also a period of sort of a semi-mourning period. And the reason for that being that there were various kinds of massacres that happened to Jews during this time of year over the centuries and the millennia. And so we're remembering that. But this is during this time of counting the Omer, of counting the days from Passover to Shavuot. So each one of these things, I just want to connect it to us as climate activists. So I invite you to just put in the chat something that you remember and mourn. In Jewish tradition, we have specific things in Jewish history. But as climate activists, what are some of the things that we have lost and that we want to mourn? So I just invite you to put in, write a word or two in the chat about something in particular that you might want to remember during this time of counting. So in counting the Omer, every week of the 7 weeks is equated with a divine attribute. And we are in the second week of counting the Omer, which is connected to the divine attribute of Gvura, which means strength. It's related to the word Gibor, which means a hero or somebody else hero. And but it's sort of about determination. It's about focus. It's about strength. It's about power and discipline and grounded fortitude that comes with using judgment and knowing limits. So in the arrangement of the Sefirot, in Kabbalah, Gvura is kind of opposite Chesed, which was last week, and Chesed is this unbounded love. So Gvura is often interpreted as love through saying no, about setting limits, having the strength to set limits. And setting limits can be a way to express love. And it sort of represents our ability to step back and create space. So as climate activists, we need a deep inner strength to keep on going, staying focused, accessing our power, staying grounded, and knowing limits. And saying there are limits to fossil fuel consumption, obviously, but also recognizing our own limits. So I'm about to ask you another question, but I just want to point out some things that are in some of the things people are mourning. Lost opportunities from Carter's presidency. We could have made a difference. Somebody mentioned knowing versus denial of reality. Right, that's a different, important point. Mourning the loss of season synchronicity, the destruction of the indigenous communities of the lower Jezreel Valley, resulting in the draining of a natural resource in an otherwise dry environment. So these are some of the things that we're acknowledging that are gone. So now, thinking about Gvura and all these aspects of Gvura, I invite you to write in the chat, what strength within yourself do you feel the need to more fully access in order to keep going as a climate activist? What part of your inner strength do you feel like you need to sort of make a note of and think about and be aware of, that is something that you could use a little bit more of? So I invite you to take a belief that I can make a difference. That is like really important. That's critical to be maintaining ourselves as activists. Time and organization. Time, I'm not sure we can do too much about that, but there is organizational skills, right? Persistence, staying a loving human being.
More beer.
Really important.
Oops.
And there's a strength to that, because approaching these things, and that's that love and strength together. Okay, optimism and intent to accomplish. Joy and hopefulness. Wonderful, these are great. So then each day within a week also is connected to another sphera or attribute. And today it's Netzach in Gvura. Netzach kind of connects to two different Hebrew words, one of meaning victory, nitzachon, victory over our fears, our anxieties, nitzchiyut, eternity. And so Kabbalah shows the connection between these as tenacity. And Netzach is about trust in ourselves to overcome the obstacles and to keep on going. So trusting in ourselves to be strong, to continue to maintain limits, and to hang on to our determination. But Omer is also about being in the moment, counting and focusing only on this day and not on what comes next. There's a whole thing about don't even say what the next day is while you're in this day. You only say this day during the day, the number of this day, the day that you're in it. So as climate, we need to focus on what we're doing and not get stuck in our grief about what's been lost or bogged down in imagining a dire future. So what's something precious to you about today, about this particular day, day 11 in counting the Omer, about this moment in time? And I invite you to put that into the chat. Something precious that you want to acknowledge or remember for this day. This moment, this evening, saw my granddaughter have my health. Various things to treasure for today. Pear blossom and apple blossom both out, the time and opportunity to preserve the earth. Right, today is the day, right? We sing about that too. And the green is interweaving with the yellow in the forsythia. That's so true. Yeah, that's beautiful. Every day is an adventure, and so is this day. And I don't know from Omer. Okay. Okay. So at this point, where were the Hebrew slaves this week? Well, they had crossed the sea and they're now in the desert, and they have this whole issue of food and water. And so like this celebration of freedom, they've gone past that. And now they're shifting into the reality of a new life that requires this like intense determination to keep going, to stay on course, not falter, not give up on their commitment to be a free people. So as climate activists, our own realization of the long haul of the hard work, we need to acknowledge that and of the difficulty and of the pain, but of all of this situation. And yet, so what is this statement of determination that you want to make in terms of being where we are today in the climate journey? And, you know, there are moments of exhilaration as there were for the slaves after being freed, but then there's always this hard work. It's like that passes and then there's a hard work, and that keeps on going. And so what statement of determination do you want to make today? So I invite you to put that into the chat. We have already done the easy. Now we are working on the impossible. Making the impossible possible, but keeping on working on it, right? Okay. Anybody stop that peaker plant? That's your determination, making those things happen, not giving up. Getting my neighbors to care, to notice, and to act, taking one step forward every day. Keeping up the work, systemic change. These are great. These are fabulous. These are things, these are where our determination is. And so to hang onto it, hang on to your determination, step into the gift of tomorrow when it comes, but to stay in today for maximum well-being and strength. So I wish you well, and I look forward to this program today.
So I think we decided that Maria,
Maria,
Maria
there you go.
is going to give her report next because she has something important to do later. And so we want to make sure she gets this in now. Okay. Aria, tell us what your topic is.
Okay. I'm going to be talking about the ISO, the Independent Systems Operator of New England, and a rule called MOPR. And and I'll be talking about our efforts as JCAN and many other organizations, environmental organizations, to fix our electric grid. So JCAN is part of the Fix the Grid network, and other groups that are part of it are 350 Mass, Mothers Out Front, Green Roots, Breathe Clean Air, and some other organizations. So as you may already know, the Independent Systems Operator of New England, also known as ISO New England, manages our electric grid for the New England states. And they manage the sale of energy to the utilities, and their mission includes making sure the grid is reliable and that the prices are competitive. Okay, so I want to just say that ISO is largely responsible for the incredibly slow rate of transition of our electric grid to renewable power away from gas. Their unstated mission is to protect the profits of gas companies, in my opinion and other people's opinion. So ISO New England answers only to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC. And the only other people who have power over ISO are the governors of the New England states, who do have the power to pull the state out of ISO New England if they wish to do that. So one of the things that ISO New England does is it manages the sale of power to our utilities. And every year they have an auction where utilities buy power from energy companies: oil, gas, coal, renewables, hydro, and nuclear power. So in 2019, FERC established a rule for the sale of this energy called the Minimum Price Offer Rule, or MOPR. And it sets an artificially high price that renewables have to bid to sell their energy, so that it makes it hard for them to be competitive. It puts them, they have to do the same prices as gas, and they could bid really low because the energy is much more affordable. So they can't, it makes it so they can't really compete with fossil fuel companies. The pretext given for this is that it's reliability, but there are many ways to address the reliability. So as of last year, only about 7% of the energy that went into our grid was fueled by renewables, and in New England. Yes, and there was, as of 2020, 52% was fueled by gas, 27 nuclear, and then 7 from solar and wind. So the future capacity sale of power, which is managed by by FERC, by ISO, which sells power for use 3 years ahead, happens every year in early February. And ISO has been saying that they were going to end use of the MOPR rule for this last February sale. And in a stunning turnaround, at the very last minute, they decided to keep the MOPR rule for another 2 years, which ensures the use of high amount of fossil fuels in the grid for another 6 years, because these auctions, they buy energy for 3 years ahead when they do the auctions. So the Fix the Grid network, which we are a part of, and all the member organizations started a campaign to write comments to FERC. FERC can reject this. It can reject their decision to keep MOPR around for another 2 years after this. So we did a campaign of writing comments. The comments period was closed on April 21st. I wrote something on behalf of JCAN, and it was basically telling ISO that they had to make, that we were asking FERC to tell ISO that they had to get rid of the MOPR rule. Many people wrote comments. There was also a letter written to FERC from Senators Elizabeth Warren, Ed Markey, and Bernie Sanders. And Ed Markey went out to ISO, to Holyoke, and stood in front of ISO and had a big press conference and said how bad this was. And yes, and then just the last day of the comment period, which was April 21st, the very last day, there was a letter sent from Kate Theo-Harades, Massachusetts Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs, asking FERC to get rid of MOPR. And that was a little bit of a surprise. That means that Governor Baker is on board. So that's hopeful. We're hopeful about that. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say on that. On a completely other topic, just as an individual not representing JCAN, following this meeting at 7:30, I'm co-hosting the Movement Voter Project fundraiser, and I'll put the link to register, which you can still do, in the chat. And I'll be speaking, they're going to start right at 7:30, and I'll be speaking about climate change and voting if you want to come, but I'll put that in the chat. But are there any questions about anything I said? I don't know if we have time for questions. And yes, Fred.
Whoa, I just saw Lynn's chat message that Theo Harades quit today. Oh my goodness.
Yes, she quit today.
Yikes.
Yeah, I don't know what that
Yikes.
means.
So a huge part of my work on the decarbonization is because of the roadmap and because of David Ismay, and this is what it reminds me of, that David Ismay had to leave under duress. I don't know if there's duress here, but it doesn't sound like good news. I'm sorry to jump to that conclusion, but
Huh.
I mean, well, okay. That's all we know. We don't.
Right. It's indeterminate news. I think that's the way we have to look at it right now.
The news also mentioned who was taking her place, but I forget whether that was permanent or just temporary. I imagine temporary. And I don't remember who it was. I don't know either name, frankly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so it's all very interesting for us insiders. I don't know. I noticed that there's at least several people in this meeting who are not from this part of the country, and I'm sure they're, finding a lot of what's going on cryptic. But yeah, okay, that's very interesting. And I guess we'll just, as far as MOPR, do we have any idea, Mario, when
they'll make their decision?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think in about a month or so, but I don't know for sure when.
Okay. Shall we move on? I think the next on the agenda then is going to be the discussion between Harvey and Mark, and covering the what's happening in the government level in Massachusetts, from the legislative aspect and from the executive aspect. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Actually, did we decide which of you was going to start off?
Yeah, me.
Okay, Harvey, take it over.
May I interrupt for a moment just to explain to those who are not in Massachusetts that one of our primary roles and focus is local impact and state impact. And that is what we see as our primary effort. Sorry
So
about that.
so then I guess there the thing is, there's JCAN and there's JCAN Massachusetts, but there's also, I think, JCAN New York.
Yes.
JCAN, is there a Maryland one or something like that?
Yep. And
So,
there's
so
All over the country, they're JCANs. But the same concept exists.
Okay. So, okay. So,
And I think what you're saying is we're recommending that other JCANs and in your own areas focus on the local and the state level.
Right.
right. Okay. Well, that's good clarification. Harvey, you want to tell us about the executive branch and what's happening? Other than
Well, let me
that latest news.
let me kick it off a little bit, and I don't think we need to stay formally in our boxes, Mark and I. We've known each other a long time, and Mark is at the center of the legislative policy development more than me. So I'll let him cover that. I mean, I would like to try to paint a picture here, some broad strokes to kick it off. This is what we talk about in the Legs and Regs Committee, and generally what I think we.
Oh, by the way, what I'm just trying to keep Legs and Regs. There are probably a few people here who don't know what you're talking about.
All right. Well, our committee, which is our policy committee, which
Like
focuses on
legislation and regulation.
and regulation.
Yeah.
And I think it's just it's a good thing that we work on policy, and I'd like to see if we engage more people in the Massachusetts area community to work with us at JCAN on what we see as the policy need. I think what we're doing, what I really enjoy when we get together and discuss, is that we see the state of Massachusetts, and I think we're proud of the state of Massachusetts as often being a vehicle for systemic change. That's something that we seem to like to do here in Massachusetts, and I think we're good at. And you could arguably say, going back to the revolution, that this determined visionary leadership is something that often happens here. And I think it gives us an opportunity in Massachusetts to see if we can create a success model that not only works for us, but perhaps makes our efforts worthwhile, because we're giving other states and other jurisdictions a path that we've found. So this is not a new thing for Massachusetts. I just wanted to put a little historical context. There was the energy crisis in the 1970s, and the energy efficiency industry really found its ground here. And several people on the call, including Fred, Mark, and myself, are involved in the energy efficiency industry near the beginning. In the 80s, we did something relatively revolutionary with a few other states of looking at energy efficiency as a source of supply, an alternative supply of energy, kind of inverting it, and said, well, we can buy energy efficiency from consumers by giving them incentives rather than building more power plants. This concept, I think Emory Lovins deserves a lot of credit for the concept, is something that we remarkably put into practice and we were very successful with here. In 2008, there were a series of laws, including the basis for what we're doing now on climate, the Global Warming Solution Act, which was revolutionary at the time, as the greenhouse gas initiative, as well as this huge increase in the volume of Mass Save, our energy efficiency program. And these have led to almost 25% carbon emissions from 2008 to now. So now, I guess my report is on the state of the state, and then I'll hand it over to Mark in terms of what the executive branch is doing. I think what we accomplished in the last year since the last bill was signed, which was the 2021 Next Generation Climate Roadmap Bill, which really put us on a path accelerating prior laws for us to be really more focused on climate and seeking to do is to accomplish as a state our full share of what we now know the world needs from the latest climate science in order to stabilize the atmosphere and not higher than 1.5 degrees centigrade. So that's why the state is doing what it's doing. What it's doing is expanded the Mass Save program a lot. It added much more focus on climate, electrification, heat pumps. It's enhancing building codes. including designing a local option code for net zero. It's encouraging electric vehicles with increased incentives, studying the future of pipeline gas, looking to hopefully end the age of pipeline gas. It's committing to more equity for environmental justice communities so they can take advantage of the programs and avoid environmental harm. It's changing how we regulate electric and gas utilities to reward or punish them financially based on their climate performance, which is brand new. And it's requiring the state to develop detailed 5-year plans, and they've just came up with their draft 5-year plans for 2025 and 2030. Comments are due Saturday if anyone wants to take a look at it. So now, how do we think the state is doing? Okay, well, but we're not really satisfied. Mass Save did not really do what the law asked it to do completely. It's only adjusted somewhat. It doesn't have this systemic change. They're not going to really help you a lot if you have a combination of ideas for your home that deal with electrification, air conditioning, solar, batteries, vehicle charging, smart homes. They're not good at that yet. And it's something we need to press them to do. Something that we're really not doing that was in the law was the Transportation and Climate Initiative, which is sort of a carbon tax on gasoline and diesel. And Charlie Baker has frozen it right now because he just thinks gas prices are too high to make them higher with this law. Other states are following suit. So hopefully that'll be back once things settle down, but it's just been stopped. And I think we discuss as a committee that we think the utilities retain too much control of Mass Save, too much control of the future of heat and the future of gas. There's too little control. Many are dissatisfied with the way the solar incentives worked out so far. So there are things that we're not satisfied with. So this leads to the question, and I'll pass the ball to Mark, of what we should do. We have to figure out what we can accomplish as advocates, and I'll just point anecdotally that I think we weighed in heavily on the 2021 law, the Next Generation Climate Roadmap law, in faith communities generally, and kind of shocked Governor Baker with the outpouring of support for that law in the midst of the peak COVID in early January 2021, as well as January 6, 2021. In the midst of all that, he got lots of political pressure to move forward with that legislation, and he did it. So I know what we do makes a difference.
Thank you, Harvey. So let me start from that last description and then talk about where we are now. The governor actually vetoed the Next Generation Roadmap bill, pocket vetoed it when it first came to him. And the pressure that Harvey described, plus sort of a remarkable turnaround in the role of the Massachusetts House, basically created a political situation where the House was able to, the legislature was able to look like it was about to override the veto. And instead, a little negotiation happened, and the bill, essentially unchanged, was signed and passed almost a little bit more than a year ago. Now, that law, we can call it a law now, says, as Harvey said, that the state is committed to reaching net zero emissions by 2050, but it sets benchmarks between last year and 2050 in 5 and 10 year increments, requiring detailed plans in advance and reports as they go forward in meeting those goals. And as Harvey said, a couple of things have emerged as weaknesses in the way that plan is being carried out. One is the question of what Mass Save, and for people who are out of state, Mass Save is the common branding and organization of the state's utility financed weatherization and efficiency programs. It is run by the utilities under a common branding umbrella with essentially common plans, but each utility files its own plan to carry out the Mass Save operations. Those operations are primarily carried out on the residential side, at least by contract, where the utilities hire a third-party provider to actually implement the programs. And it is certainly per capita, the largest such program in the United States of any of the state programs. And on some level, I think it's actually the largest period, which is a little weird because, you know, we have states like California and New York, which are larger than Massachusetts, but Massachusetts, I think, actually spends more money, certainly more money per capita than any of those. The law, what we call the roadmap law, calls for implementation. It's not, although it was quite lengthy, it's not detailed implementation. It sets up these benchmarks and tells the administration to make them happen. Earlier this year, the House passed a bill to authorize and require the acquisition of significant offshore wind generation, which is was going forward and was going forward with a less firmness than the House wanted. They passed this bill, which is primarily about wind, sent it to the Senate. The Senate took the legislation and last week, is it only last week or was it the week before, instituted a substitute amendment, which went far beyond wind. It increased the amount of wind that was to be acquired. It added consideration for non-emitting sources other than wind, such as solar and fusion, at least on the R&D side. It emphasized equity in treatment of people. It has an extensive section on the promotion of electric vehicles, both as individual and the promotion of electrification of various kinds of fleets, public transit like the MBTA and the regional transit authorities, school buses, other public fleets. An interesting innovation, which I think takes more thought, where the Department of Public Utilities has regulatory authority over organizations like Lyft and Uber. And the bill that came out of the Senate points the DPU and says, regulate these sort of pseudo fleets so that they can become more electrified going forward. And it put forward a few important things that are sort of pending legislation in Massachusetts. One is that it allowed for 10 towns, municipalities to ban new gas hookups as an experiment. Advocates like myself and others had been arguing that all towns should be allowed to do this, but they settled on the magic number of 10. They are requiring a review of the gas company's plans to refurbish the gas pipelines that is underway and has been, the legislature passed a law saying they had to fix leaks in the gas pipeline systems in 2014. And the law was phrased, you have to fix leaks and potential leaks. And that potential leaks thing has turned into the gas companies have taken that as authorization to replace the entire system of pipelines with plastic pipes that, at least in theory, can hold hydrogen and other non-traditional gases. And it's extraordinarily expensive and disruptive operation. So the legislature's asked for a review of how this plan is going forward. And they did a couple of things with Mass Save. Like Mass Save had decided that it didn't have the authority to allow solar installations to be part of their program, and the legislature said, yes, you do. You can do that, and a couple other critical features. So it's an important piece of legislation. It has passed the Senate, goes back to the House. They now have two different versions of the bill. But it doesn't cover, and I think a lot of us we're in this odd position where almost everything that's in the Senate bill are things that ought to be done, that we are supporting. But it doesn't cover some critical things that ought to be done as well. Harvey mentioned this. He says when he mentioned that Mass Save is not doing what it could be doing, they're not offering support for the kind of comprehensive retrofit that gets a building from being a fossil fuel greenhouse gas emitting building to being a non-emitting building. The comprehensive work of insulation and weatherization, which they do, heat pumps at the same time, building up, improving the electrical system in the house so they can handle the electrification of the house, integrating solar and storage and smart building technology into the retrofits, all of which a sort of a more aggressive administration could probably find legal justification for doing now. But given that that has not happened, most of us believe that we have to add that to some other legislative form. At the same time, the gas companies have, led by National Grid, have launched a both regulatory and public relations effort to get hydrogen and biomethane and synthetic natural gas allowed in as fuels into the heating system. And the rationale from their point of view is that these fuels are not fossil fuels, which is true, and are non-emitting, which is not so true. And that if they can get them authorized, then they'll be able to continue to justify spending all the money that they need to spend to keep the gas pipeline grid going forward. We were looking for the Senate to prevent them from doing that. They've announced this study of the plan of the retrofitting plans that they've got for the pipeline system, but they have not stopped the process going forward. And I guess there are a series of things that Harvey and I and most of the other people think that the legislature should authorize and require the Department of Public Utilities to do around the retrofitting of existing buildings. This comprehensive approach, the incorporation of smart building technologies into that buildings going forward, and the an expansion of the code that would allow allow towns to require that new buildings be zero emission buildings, which, as I say, they've allowed effectively in 10 municipalities, but it should be extended to the entire amount. So I'm attempting in very short language to summarize, some 100 pages of legislative language, and I'm sure I've left things out. But the situation that we're in is that we have a Senate-produced bill that is very good in what it does, with a handful of minor exceptions, but leaves out a lot of what needs to be done to move the state forward. And in terms of advocacy, right now, our effort is to get the House to produce a companion bill to their own wind bill that would expand in the directions that I've described. So that's the quick part.
That was excellent, but it was sort of like the fire hose
Yes.
treatment, which is the only thing you could do, isn't it? As people can see, Legs and Regs Committee, Legislation and Regulations Committee, meets for an hour weekly, and weekly for a lot of groups seems very frequent, but there's never anytime we run out of things to talk about.
Well, let me, one of the things that Mark and I were both talking to and come in a lot of our discussions is that generally there's too much utility control and too little city and town control. And this is something that, whether we're talking about New England ISO or building codes, a lot of cities and towns don't want to allow new buildings to have natural gas hookups. And somehow it was decided that 10 cities and towns in the proposed Senate legislation would be allowed to to disqualify new natural gas hookups in buildings, but the other 341 cities and towns in Massachusetts could not. And there's the basic argument is that the real estate industry can lobby the state government and the governor very well. And they're saying there are a lot of people building, expensive new homes and they want gas cooking, and that's that, so they have to be able to have it. And one of the things that Mark and I talk about is that, maybe we can figure out things like, someone wants to have a propane tank so they can have gas cooking and have, backup heat or something like that. I mean, that's okay, but we should be able to still disqualify them from connecting to the gas pipeline, because the gas pipeline better not still be there, far into the life of this building. It's got to go away. We should be able to tell people not to connect to the gas pipeline anymore. I mean, this is a shoving match between the cities and towns and utilities, and the question is, where's the state going to weigh in? And perhaps we can influence that.
Yeah, it floors me that this is, when considering that the state and the legislature have voted for a target of zero emissions in 30 years from now or less, that it's a big deal that one town should ask to not allow new gas hookups in new buildings. Within the next 30 years, we have to have no gas hookups in any building.
Right.
We aren't a rapidly growing state. The number of new buildings annually is probably only 1 or 2%, I don't know, of all buildings. And yet the legislature is having a hard time allowing towns to make that ruling for themselves.
The leverage of the gas companies, of the fossil fuel companies, is enormous in terms of the capital and lobbying they can bring to bear.
Right. Myra had her hand up. Maria?
Yeah. I have 2 questions. The first is, let's say, God willing, that we elect a Democratic governor coming up. Looks very likely we will. What kind of power would she have to, for example, tell the gas companies they can't do this, this whole pipe plan that they want to do? Or, what kind of power would she have to push the state to have more cities be able to have hookups? So that's one question. And the next question is just about stoves and people wanting gas stoves. And I think that there needs to be an education campaign about how gas is bad for your health, and an induction stove is not only fine to cook with, but is so much better for the health of children, the health of old people, everybody's health. That people don't understand that because of what the gas companies have said in their propaganda. So I want to hear you comment on both of those.
Let's see. Do you want me to go first or is me, Harv? Okay. I mean, on the governor's power, the governor appoints the Department of Public Utilities people, and as I understand it, 2 of them are coterminous with the current governor, so that the new governor and one goes on, so that the new governor would be able to must appoint 2 new people to the commission, which is a majority of the 3, and that's pretty powerful stuff on much of the things that we're talking about on an administrative level. The DPU determines electric and gas rates. It oversees and approves or disapproves the mass save plan. The DPU is the one that came out with this rule, decision that they did not have the power to require the utilities to finance solar and electric storage, which I thought was legally questionable. I still think is legally questionable. So there's considerable power there, and more broadly, they appoint all the cabinet people who oversee other aspects of the energy thing. The other thing they've got which really has not been used that much, is the bully pulpit, the ability to initiate policy, promote it. Governor Baker has been, he's not terrible. There are certainly many worse governors, but in terms of what one could do politically in Massachusetts, he's been actually quite weak. And I think that a new governor can and will take more aggressive steps there. But some of this needs to go through the legislature. And so that you can't, I don't think the governor can tell the gas companies, no, you can't introduce hydrogen. Although it'd be an interesting thing if they tried to, and so it happened. I'd love to be on that legal challenge. And then I'll talk about stoves in a second if you want, but Harvey, if you want to comment more on the governor's powers.
Well, I mean, you know more about, I mean, clearly with some legislation, the governor can be given whatever power in this arena that we'd like. I think it's more politics, and it's actually a fair question. Are we going to get to climate neutrality sooner by having some flexibility for people who have different values and different interests, and still find a way that everybody appreciates what we're doing and we all move forward? And, you know, basically, if someone is really got to have gas cooking and we give them a propane tank, that's so small in the carbon footprint of a home that it's not the end of the world, but staying on the gas pipeline is. So we have to find solutions that work, you know, for people. The reality is that in a lot of homes, existing older Massachusetts homes, heat pumps aren't going to go the last mile. They're going to need something on extremely cold winter weather. In Maine, where there's lots of heat pumps, they have wood stoves. I mean, you got to have something to add to that chill in the winter, unless you have a very efficient or new home. And if people want to do that with a small tank of a fuel that can be increasingly decarbonized over time, then I think we have to find ways to have a big tent and have solutions that make everybody happy, because that's the way we do something that red states will look at what we're doing and say, I guess we should do that too. Everybody's happy. We have to find solutions that don't have a lot of sacrifice and pain associated with them.
I guess Fred has his hand up.
Okay, on the question of the future of gas, and I think, Harvey, you said a shoving match, or was that Mark? In any case, is anybody working on maybe it's called a counter study, to do the actual carbon accounting, to call them on these ideas that don't seem to have the technical grounding that they're actually going to be carbon advantageous?
There are many. There's an accumulation of studies that go directly at those points, but there's nothing that has sort of the official stamp of approval that this DPU process has going forward. So we, on substance and on scientific basis, I think we're in pretty good shape. Certainly about hydrogen, a little less so, I'd say, on the biomethane. But we need you need a credential to go with the studies. On hydrogen, our people know the utilities plan is to that what they say they're going to do is buy green hydrogen generated by electrolysis from surplus renewable power, and this hydrogen would be injected into presumably a new piping system, since the current one won't hold it, and would represent up to 20% of the volume or 7% of the heat content of the gases that are there. And aside from the fact that it's kind of expensive, like 3 times the cost of methane, there is this little problem, which is that hydrogen is highly corrosive and explosive. So that if the hydrogen is going through iron or steel pipes at any point in the transition, it will corrode those pipes rather quickly. And then there's the explosion problem. So it's a terrible idea. And it basically, it comes with a price tag, which is you have to replace all of the pipes and probably many of the appliances to make it safe. And that is estimated at somewhere between 20 and 40 billion dollars for the pipes alone, or between, just to personalize it, somewhere between $11,000 and $23,000 per customer.
Yeah, Mark, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's all fascinating, but you know, you had me at excess renewable power. Does everybody know what that means? Does anybody have too much renewable power? Let me know.
You know, it's an interesting the theory is that you'll put so much renewable power online that there'll be points in the day where you can't use it, and you use those and you generate hydrogen at those points. And it's we're nowhere near that, but California actually hits this with solar power now, and they will hit it more. So it's not quite as silly as it sounds, although it seems to me like it's probably 10 years premature to be worrying about. But anyway, that's the concept. They don't guarantee that that's the only source of hydrogen they'll use, by the way. They say they'll assume it.
If you had excess renewable power, isn't that what you would put into storage?
Right. Well, this is a form of storage. You basically take the excess renewable power and you make hydrogen. That's the idea.
Except then you get the whole issue of how you transport the hydrogen
right
through corroding pipes.
Right.
Absolutely. So Jerry Halberstadt has a comment or question.
Yeah, I mean, hydrogen for home heating, it's another example of smoke and mirrors. And that's a technical term of the art. I personally, and just taking the headline of the IPCC report, with all due respect, ladies and gentlemen, we have to stop using carbon and methane 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We no longer have the time to play games of, well, let's let them use a little bit. It doesn't really count. I hear this everywhere. I hear this as an excuse why, well, the peaker plant, you know, it's not so bad. But, you know, you look around and everybody makes excuses for their own bad. There's somebody doing something worse. So it's okay for me to break the law, to drive drunk, to kill people. I'm only killing a few people. You know, and there's mass murder taking place in Ukraine. So you shouldn't bother with me. And
well, Jerry,
we're going too damn slow to save the planet.
Right.
And we're operating, with all respect, because I know everybody in the room is sincere about this. With all respect, we don't have time. We need to shut things down, and it is going to be painful. It'll be a hell of a lot more painful if we don't act now.
Can I just say, Jerry, I think you're so incredibly right. I've been in the energy, I've been editing and writing about energy for 40 years, 50 years. And we're too late. And you know who owns those wind power plants that we're going to be having? The oil and gas companies. Who else can afford those wind towers? Who could afford to put those wind towers in? The oil and gas company is covering them in all bases all at once. And Americans are spoiled. We're spoiled. If we have to give up our 10 cell phones, we're spoiled. There's some way, I don't know how to convince people that they have to conserve, because conservation is the only way of the future. We don't have 2050. 2050, you know, look at the weather now. We're not going to have we're going to have a reliable climate in 2050. By 2050, the climate will be a tremendous mess. We won't be able to raise food. We won't be able to, we'll be sitting around and looking like Fred Flintstone. We're going to be like Fred Flintstone in 2050, if there's anybody alive. We've got to, I don't know how to get it to the average person that there is no time. There is no time. We have to do something now. And I think the average person comes home and watches damn TV or plays with the cell phone and does not see, is not seeing the future, is not seeing the future. I don't know, Jerry, how come you and I can see the future and they don't see it?
Well, Barbara, let's make a date to talk about this and see what the next step is.
Oh, good.
Okay,
Gotta be-
I'll put my contact information in there because you've been at it a lot longer than me, so.
We have actually an agenda. So there's a couple other people who are on the agenda. So if you don't mind, I think we maybe need to move along so that some of us can also be done in time for Maria's excellent event at 7:30. So I believe, speaking of people doing something, getting out there, David Schreiber is going to give a report on a recent event.
Well, I'm going to keep this really brief because there were some really interesting things being discussed a few moments ago. And so I'm talking about the Exodus Alliance demonstration that took place at Chase Bank at midday on Thursday last. And I put into the chat at the very beginning a link to a bunch of photographs that were taken by somebody from Getty Pictures. We were hoping to get more media coverage, but we didn't. What we did get was a much better turnout than we had anticipated. We were hoping that we'd get somewhere between 90 and 100, and we got somewhere between 120 and 150 people with lots of good posters and banners and spirit and singing and matzah and yeah. And we finished up with a lot of happy pigeons feeding them lots of crumbs that had fallen on the ground. There were a couple of people in our group that bought a message actually meant for Jamie Dimon, and somebody wonderfully made a poster addressing Jamie Dimon, Chase Bank, because Chase is probably the largest of the banks that lend to and support fossil fuel expansion, or as Arthur Waskow referred to them as the Schmutzig Seven, which was first and foremost Chase Bank, Citibank, State Street, and I can't remember everybody else on that list. There's another 4, but anyway, there was a lot of, as I said, a lot of singing, and it was wrapped up with Judith Black doing her marvelous storytelling. And I wish you were all there. And I'm done, so we can go back to more interesting conversations.
How many, put your hand up if you were there. Okay, yeah, it was a good turnout. By the way, there was a drone that was flying around, supposedly taking photography. Was that part of your
That was from the Getty Pictures guy, the pro. He had some amazing equipment.
Okay, so that's you put that little gallery of pictures. Is some of that in there?
There's a link.
Okay, great.
To the display, to the pictures that he had done. There were some other pictures taken by various individuals that were posted. I think you'd have to go to the Dayenu website, DAYENU.org, and look for the Boston demonstration. There were demonstrations of this sort done all across the country. We were feeling like we were most in competition with San Francisco, and we wanted to beat them because they had done it on Wednesday and had a turnout of some 95 people. And we were very pleased that we outnumbered them with a smaller metro.
So, okay, actually, Harvey has asked that we get back to David Fillingham before we go to
I have
Lynn.
a question.
Oh,
If I can ask David a question, is
yeah,
US,
okay.
US Bank or US Bancorp one of the banks?
I'd have to look back at the list that Arthur Waskow sent. I don't think US Bank Corp was one of the worst 7.
Okay, thanks. I'll find.
Vanguard, I'm sorry, Vanguard Investment is. State
Oh,
Street-
really? It's okay.
Yeah, Vanguard is because so much of they have very few ESG screened funds, and those which are screened do not exclude fossil fuels. They are, ESG is, by the way, environmental, social governance. Those are metrics that the investment community looks at if they care about it, to determine how impactful a company might be in its performance, not just financial, but in other realms of society.
Okay, Lynn is up next. Oh my gosh, Mark, I don't know how I think Lynn has planned a little event here. I think we better let Lynn go. If we have a few minutes at the end, we have to get back to a couple other questions, but Lynn, you want to? Yeah.
I do. And I hope you'll, I think Janitor Thea was going to help me with the script. It's just a little spiel. Has anybody ever done a spiel, a Purim spiel? And what a spiel is, I think everyone knows. Hello?
I'm not saying it. My last name is Spielman.
Okay. So I've taken the theme of Passover and tortured it into something that's supposed to be a little bit, maybe for the second day, I did it with my family and I got various different reviews from various different people in my family. So we're going to just try it and you're going to tell me what you think about it. And maybe it's the beginning of something to be done on the second day. And here we go. So
Lynn,
what?
could you make that larger on your screen? Because, it gets smaller on everyone else's screen. And so.
Well,
you should be able to enlarge it on your screen, can't you?
Okay,
There it
that's
is.
getting better. That's getting better.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
now, okay,
Okay, reader number 1. Janet, are you willing to be reader number 1?
okay.
There's going to be 8, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone be ready to jump in to be reader 2 or 3, whatever. Okay.
Oh, can I scroll it?
Yeah,
Can
go
I?
ahead.
Okay, yeah, okay. Moses was a boy who did not know. Wait, I have to make it so I can read it. Okay. Moses was a boy who did not know his birth family, was adopted by a wealthy California family who lived in the canyon land north of the city and brought up by them in comfort and happiness. One lovely spring day, while walking in the Sur, he saw a flaming bush. The sky was orange and around him the air smelled of smoke. Ash rained down on him. Hineni, he said to the air, I am here. It was as if he had been called to a new life, a life involved with that fire. He thought maybe it was about a careless camper who flicked a match. He began thinking of PG&E and its responsibility to keep their lines free of debris. He thought about the excessive use of fossil fuel from extraction to transportation to burning. He decided to go to Congress to demand carbon pricing as a way of using market forces to decarbonize the electric grid and diversify the holdings of PG&E.
We all say, let our planet
Planet
thrive.
thrive.
Right.
Okay, reader number 2, Harvey, please.
Unbeknown to him, he had a brother, Aaron, who around the same time had his own revelation. His neighborhood in Port Arthur, Texas, had been subject to 230 illegal air pollution upset events from the US's largest concentration of oil refineries. He knew that environmental controls were loose and that the cancer rate among his neighbors was 40% higher than Texas's overall cancer mortality rate. He also knew that the incidents released toxic chemicals, including benzene, a known carcinogen. The American Lung Association gave his county a grade of F for air quality. Asthma rates for children are more than twice the national average. Hineni, said Aaron, I am here. Well, not exactly here. I'm off to see what I can do about the terrible cost of the oil and gas industry to all of us who breathe. He decided to weigh in against the fossil fuel lobbyists, the men in suits who haunt the halls of the EPA, state regulatory agencies, and the lobbies of the legislatures.
Let
our
planet
thrive.
Thrive.
Barbara, reader 3, please.
Meanwhile, their sister Miriam, who had moved from Port Arthur to Pittsburgh to pursue an acting career, learned that the Royal Dutch Shell is building a giant factory using the fracked gas to create millions of tons of plastic pellets to be used in manufacturing. Profits from the Marcellus Shale will be increased by utilizing the gas byproduct ethane for the manufacture of plastic. When completed, the facility will be fed by pipelines stretching hundreds of miles across Appalachia. It will have its own rail system with 3,300 freight cars. Hineni, said Miriam. She decided to pressure the banking industry, Pharaohs, to divest in their holdings of fossil fuel.
Let
Let our planet
thrive.
thrive.
All right. Reader 4, Rabbi, please.
One by one, people here and there call out their bitterness.
Hineni,
I am
here.
Ma,
Listen to me.
I
I
notice.
notice.
They call out from the oiled fields of Nigeria.
Hineni,
Shema, we can't drink the water.
Water.
We call out from the world's most rapidly sinking city, Jakarta.
Hineni,
Shema, we have to move the capital.
Capital.
We call out from Pulaski Way in Peabody.
Hineni,
No
No
fossil
fossil
fuel
fuel plant here.
We call out from East Boston.
No
No transformer substation here. Ma.
Ma.
Now, if anyone wants to call out anything that they're thinking about,
Yeah, war.
Ukraine.
Yeah.
it should have been enough. And now let's sing Dayenu. I didn't do very well with this, but we can try it. Okay? Wait. Okay, here we go.
Exxon Mobil fracking
Black Rock
In front of
Bill 66.
Exxon Mobil fracking rock Use oil for plastic.
Road to business. AC to report.
Oil for plastic. Money.
Money.
Hard enough with a metronome.
We'll
be free of carbon
All we need is
Okay, Fred, reader 5, please.
I'm still laughing. Okay. And that was great, by the way. And that's the first time we've sung together at JCAN that I can ever remember.
It's always a crowd pleaser.
It's really hard to do it over Zoom this way. It's really great.
I don't think we even ever did it in person. So, okay, let's see what we can do here. And the Carbon Pharaohs, hardened their hearts in their offices and palaces and muttered, "I really don't care. Our money insulates us. We've taken risks to build the economy. We're safe. We're blessed."
Thea, will you be reader 6?
Yes, but then, although the carbon pharaohs thought they were safe and protected, even they were affected by weather extremes. Oi, our vineyards in southern France are too hot. Oi, our safari in Kenya has no animals. Oi, the air outside is dirty. Oi, refugees fill the street. Oi, our yacht got caught in a hurricane. Oi.
Perhaps they will see that our common humanity means that all are affected by the exploitation of resources. We can return to Eden. It's up to us. We see the steps ahead of us. Everyone here has a suggestion and a comment.
Commitment.
So we could talk about our
Look in the chat.
commitments, but I just felt like, I don't know, I thought it'd be sort of fun to do this. What do you think?
Great. It was
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you.
Bravo.
Yeah, that was fabulous.
Was about
Because I mean, I don't
Looks
want to
like-
say anything too negative about Jerry and the other commenter, but we know that we're discouraged. We know that. That's not our job. Our job is to try to make things happen. And when we're with people that agree with us, to complain, you know, it's just like it doesn't move us forward. And I just want to say please don't come to Regs and Legs if you think that's what's going to happen, because we work at moving forward. We think about the things we can do to make a difference. And granted, it's not on the scale that Fred likes making a difference. It's a different scale, but it's really a way of being energized and adding our voices together to try to affect public policy. So thanks, everybody.
Bravo, Lynn. Well said.
Thank you. Lynn is irrepressible. I mean, it's kind of obvious. It's kind of obvious, but I mean, she is just all over everything. And I'm glad you stated it, Lynn, because that is Lynn's outlook. She's mad about everything, but she's going to do something about everything, and she smiles. It's like
Well, it's just the way we need to, it's just the way I need to keep alive. How many years, you know, we all know we're going to die, and we all know our lives will be over. And then what is it that we can do from now till then? And of course, and I'm pretty old now. So I know my many tekel parson, my days are numbered. And I really feel more of an urge than ever to get more done.
Yes.
So thanks, everybody. And I do find JCAN to be a wonderful place to meet with others who care about the same thing and are willing to move forward. And I don't have as much knowledge as most of the other people in the group in Legs and Regs, but there you go. All right.
We have our special fields.
Yeah.
So,
But
There are
thank
different kinds of gifts.
you.
one of Lynn's is she will write a letter on everything.
But I love it when I could write a letter that is signed JCAN, because that's like, to be a Jewish voice for what we think should happen has a certain weight to it. You know, when I just sign Lynn Nadeau, it's not the same thing. So
Right.
Right.
Yasher Koach, everyone, for today's program. This was really terrific. I think we had a lot of stuff, good stuff going on. Harvey, you had wanted to wrap up. I don't know if that's still on the agenda point.
Wrap up, I'm not sure, but I did, you put the highlight on JCAN's Mass Energize implementation for next time. I'll just encourage people, because I think that's what I was going to mention. You can just Google JCAN Mass Energize and try it. If you haven't tried it, please try it. I think it'll make the next meeting more productive if everyone who hasn't tried it goes there. You can take action as an individual. I think next time we want to see if we can get congregational teams more frequently being developed. But I think we're better able to have that conversation if you go there and try it.
Yeah, but I was just thinking about that. It would be good if people could try to enlist somebody else from the congregation who isn't like active in JCAN, but just, you know, somebody appropriate in your congregation to attend that meeting.
Well, it just comes up, you know, in circles that we're in.
Mhm.
Say, gee, I wish I had some idea what I should be doing and what the kind of things are that I can be doing. They say, well, here's something that will give you a set of things that you can be doing, and you can learn about it, and you can tell us what you've already done, and it counts towards the JCAN carbon mitigation campaign. And if you like it, maybe we'll form a team. And it actually worked out that way at Temple Shir Tikva over the last month or so. So I recommend it.
And I like what you said, Jen, also that bring a friend, tap somebody else in the group. And I go back to what I said at the very beginning, just to remind you, I am hopeful that this is the moment that we are actually in a moment of acceleration, that we don't realize how fast it is. So as you're going about reconnecting with folks in your congregation, ask around and see if you're also surprised that there's more heat pump, electric vehicle, and solar going on than you realized. I think it might be now. We'll know soon, but I'm holding out some hope.
Are all the congregational participants in Mass Energize been informed of the meeting coming up on the 26th?
No, you've all got the advance notice. This is the first announcement. It's going out. We'll talk about it on Friday, and we can see if it's okay with you. We'll start rolling out the publicity as appropriate after that.
Very good. Thanks.
All right,
Okay, well-
everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah, right. So